If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The morning arrived just as it always did in New York City, with the sky tinged with grey and the sound of the city already spilling through the busy streets. In Queens, in a neighborhood where tall apartment buildings mixed with old houses and noisy storefronts, a public school opened its gates to welcome hundreds of children arriving in groups, talking loudly, laughing, and shoving one another with that unique energy of childhood. Among all those children, one little girl walked slowly with short, uncertain steps. Her name was Helena. She was 10 years old, and her brown eyes always seemed tired, as if they carried an invisible weight that no one else could see. Her white uniform shirt was a little wrinkled but clean, and the backpack on her shoulders seemed too heavy for her frail frame. She walked through the school gate without looking around, without greeting anyone, just moving forward with her head down and her hands clasped over her stomach. Since the night before, Helena had felt a nagging pain in her stomach. It wasn't just hunger, although the hunger was there, constant and persistent. It was something bigger, something that came from within, from that feeling of emptiness that couldn't be filled with food, but with care, with attention, with someone asking if she was okay. But no one asked, not at home, not at school. No one really looked at Helena. The girl entered the school's main hallway and smelled breakfast being cooked in the cafeteria. The aroma of toast and bacon made her stomach churn, and she pressed her hands even tighter against her belly, trying to ignore the pain. That grew with every step. Helena knew she would have to wait until lunchtime to eat something, and even then she often couldn't finish her food because anxiety would tighten her throat and everything seemed hard to swallow. When she reached her classroom, a few classmates were already there, chatting excitedly about a football game that had happened over the weekend. Helena walked past them unnoticed, as always, and went straight to her desk in the back of the room, near the window. That's where she liked to be, away from the stairs, away from the conversations, just watching the world outside and wishing she were anywhere but there. Her teacher, Mrs. Davis, entered the room shortly after, carrying a stack of notebooks and a tired expression that matched Helena's. Mrs. Davis was a woman in her early 40s, her hair tied in a messy bun, with eyes that tried to maintain patience even when the whole class was shouting at once. She greeted the students with a forced smile and began roll call, reading the names aloud as the children answered, "Here," some with enthusiasm, others with disinterest. When Helena's name was called, she raised her hand timidly and answered in a quiet, almost inaudible voice. Mrs. Davis marked her as present and continued down the list without looking at the girl. No one looked at Helena. It was as if she were invisible, a ghost who took up space but didn't really exist. The class started with math, and Helena tried to focus on the numbers the teacher was writing on the board, but the pain in her stomach was getting worse. She shifted in her chair, trying to find a position that would ease the discomfort, but nothing helped. The feeling of emptiness was overwhelming, and she began to wonder if she could hold on until lunch. It was then that a sharp, sudden, uncontrollable cramp shot through her body. Helena felt something move inside her, something she couldn't hold back, and before she could do anything, an embarrassing sound echoed through the room, followed by a strong, unmistakable odor. The girl felt the heat rise to her face, felt the fabric of her uniform become wet and soiled, and felt her entire world come crashing down on her. The whole room froze for a second. The silence was so profound that Helena could hear her own heart pounding desperately in her chest. And then, like a wave crashing against the rocks, the laughter erupted. Loud cackles, pointing fingers, voices overlapping in a chorus of mockery. "Look what she did," someone yelled. "That's so gross," shouted another. "The girl pooped her pants," a third voice added, and more laughter spread through the room like wildfire. Helena was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back, clenching her teeth, refusing to let them see that she was about to fall apart. The shame was so immense that she could barely think, barely feel anything beyond the humiliation that burned like a live coal. Mrs. Davis shot up from her desk, trying to control the situation. "Quiet!" she yelled, slamming her hand on the desk. "Stop it right now!" But curiosity had already taken over the class, and the children got out of their seats, forming a circle around Helena, some even taking out their phones to record the scene. Helena shrank against the wall, trying to disappear, trying to become even smaller than she already was. She wrapped her arms around her body, as if she could protect herself. From the words, the stares, the cameras pointed at her. The tears began to stream down her face, silent and hot, and she squeezed her eyes shut, wishing this was all just a nightmare she could wake up from. "Get back," Mrs. Davis ordered, pushing some students away. "Back to your seats now." Some reluctantly obeyed, but others kept watching, whispering among themselves, snickering. The teacher picked up the classroom phone and called the main office, explaining the situation in a tense, worried voice. "We need help in here," she said. "It's urgent, and we need to speak with Helena's guardians." In the school's main office, the situation was handled with seriousness. The school counselor, a woman named Ms. Miller, wrote down Helena's name and pulled the girl's file. There was the father's name, Ryan Anderson, along with a business phone number. Ms. Miller dialed the number, hoping someone would answer quickly. Across the city, in a modern office in Midtown Manhattan, Ryan Anderson was in an important meeting with foreign investors. He was a man of 45, tall, with broad shoulders, and a commanding presence with graying temples and dark eyes that conveyed authority. Ryan had built a real estate empire, and his company was one of the most respected in New York. He was used to being in charge, making quick decisions, and solving complex problems with efficiency. But when the phone on the corner of his desk began to ring insistently, and his assistant entered the room with an urgent expression, something shifted. "It's your daughter's school," she said in a low voice. "They say it's serious." Ryan felt his chest tighten. He excused himself from the investors, took the phone, and listened to the counselor's tense voice explaining that Helena had had a serious accident at school and needed immediate assistance. Ryan didn't wait to hear more details. He hung up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the office without looking back, leaving the meeting unfinished and the investors confused. As he drove through the congested streets of New York, Ryan's heart was racing. He tried to imagine what could have happened, tried to remember the last time he had really talked to Helena, the last time he had looked into her eyes and asked how she was doing. Guilt began to squeeze his chest, but he pushed the thought away and focused on getting to the school as quickly as possible. Back in the classroom, Helena remained huddled against the wall, trembling, her head down and her hands clutching the stained fabric of her uniform. Mrs. Davis had sent the students out to the playground, but the smell still lingered in the air, and the girl felt she would never be able to erase that moment from her memory. She heard voices in the hallway, hurried footsteps, and knew that soon everyone in the school would be talking about her, laughing at her, pointing at her. When the sound of firm footsteps echoed down the hall, Helena slowly lifted her eyes. The door opened and Ryan entered the room with an expression that mixed concern and determination. Mrs. Davis stood up quickly, trying to explain what had happened, but Ryan wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on Helena, on the way she was curled up, trembling, ashamed, broken. Ryan crossed the room in long strides, and when he reached his daughter, he knelt on the floor to be at her level. Helena looked at him with red, swollen eyes, and Ryan felt a deep pain shoot through his chest. He slowly took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around Helena, covering her completely, shielding her from the eyes that still insisted on watching through the half-open door. "Let's go," he said in a low but firm voice. "We're going home." Helena didn't answer. She just let herself be carried, allowing her father to lift her into his arms and carry her out of the room. Ryan walked down the school hallway with his daughter wrapped in his jacket, ignoring the curious stares of students and teachers, ignoring the counselor's attempts to talk to him. He just wanted to get Helena out of there, to take her far away from that humiliation, that pain. In the car, Ryan helped Helena into the back seat and gently closed the door. He got into the driver's seat, adjusted the rear-view mirror, and looked at his daughter in it. Helena was curled up, hugging her father's jacket, her face hidden and her shoulders trembling. "Helena," Ryan said softly, trying to start a conversation. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Helena shook her head, but said nothing. Ryan tried again, asking if she wanted water, if she was hungry, if she needed to see a doctor. Girl just kept shaking her head, refusing to speak, refusing to look at him. It was then that Ryan noticed something he should have noticed a long time ago. Helena was too thin. Her face was pale, her eyes were sunken, and there was a fragility about her that went beyond the normal tiredness of a child. A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "Helena," he said with more urgency, "when was the last time you ate?" Silence. "Did you have breakfast this morning?" The girl shook her head. "What about last night? Did you have dinner?" Once again, the answer was no. Ryan felt anger begin to boil inside him, but he controlled it. He didn't want to scare Helena, didn't want her to think he was angry at her. He took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice calm. "And why didn't you eat, sweetie?" Helena finally lifted her eyes and looked at her father in the rearview mirror. "There was no food," she said, in a voice so quiet Ryan almost didn't hear it. "The fridge was empty." The pieces began to fit together in Ryan's mind like a sinister puzzle. He had left Helena in the care of Veronica, his partner of 3 years, while he spent long hours at work, traveled for meetings, signed contracts. Veronica had promised to take care of Helena, had said the girl would be safe and well fed. Ryan had believed her, had trusted her, and now he was realizing he had made a terrible mistake. He started the car and began driving toward their house, located in a gated community in Westchester County. The drive was silent, with Ryan trying to control the storm of emotions brewing inside him and Helena trying to disappear in the back seat. When they finally reached the community, Ryan drove through the automatic gate and down the tree-lined street to their house. It was a large mansion with manicured lawns, a swimming pool, and an imposing facade that conveyed wealth and comfort. But when Ryan parked the car and looked at the house, something was wrong. The front door was slightly ajar, and he was sure he had locked it that morning. He got out of the car and helped Helena out, keeping the jacket wrapped around her. Together they walked to the door, and Ryan pushed it open slowly. What he saw on the other side made his blood run cold. The living room was in complete disarray. There were empty bottles scattered on the floor, dirty wine glasses on the coffee table, ashtrays overflowing with cigarette butts, and a strong smell of perfume mixed with alcohol hung in the air. The curtains were drawn, but all the lights were on, creating a strange and uncomfortable atmosphere. Ryan moved through the room with Helena hidden behind him, taking in every detail with growing horror. There were clothes thrown on the sofa, shoes scattered on the floor, and clear signs that the house had been the scene of parties and gatherings he knew nothing about. It was then that Veronica appeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly with unsteady steps. She was a woman in her early 30s, blonde with a slender body and an angular face. She was wearing a pink silk robe, smudged makeup, and an annoyed expression. When she saw Ryan and Helena standing in the living room, she frowned. "What are you two doing here at this hour?" she asked in a slurred voice. "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" Ryan looked at her with an expression that mixed disbelief and rage. "What the hell happened here, Veronica?" She came down the rest of the stairs and waved a dismissive hand. "Nothing. Just some friends who came over last night. Why the long face?" Ryan pointed to the mess around them. "This is nothing. And where was Helena during this party?" Veronica rolled her eyes. "In her room, obviously. It's not like she participates in anything. She just stays in there, quiet, not bothering anyone." "And the food," Ryan continued, trying to keep his voice under control. "Why is there no food in the fridge? Why hasn't my daughter eaten anything since yesterday?" Veronica looked at Helena with a contemptuous expression. "She doesn't eat because she doesn't want to. I make food and she won't touch it. It's not my fault she's a picky eater." Helena shrank even further, as if trying to vanish. Ryan noticed the movement and felt his anger surge. He took a step forward, placing himself between Veronica and his daughter. "You're lying," he said in a low, dangerous voice. "My daughter got sick at school today. She had a humiliating accident because she was weak, hungry, neglected. And you're trying to tell me it's her fault?" Veronica crossed her arms and lifted her chin defiantly. "I did what I could, but that girl is impossible. She doesn't talk, she doesn't eat, she doesn't help with anything. She lives in her own world, like no one else exists. You have no idea how much work it is to take care of her." Ryan felt like he was about to lose control, but he took a deep breath and turned to Helena. "Go to your room, sweetie. I'll handle this." Helena hesitated, looking at her father with frightened eyes, but Ryan gave her a reassuring gesture, and she finally obeyed, climbing the stairs slowly, still wrapped in her father's jacket. When Helena disappeared down the second-floor hallway, Ryan turned back to Veronica, and this time there was no restraint in his eyes. "We need to talk, and you're going to tell me everything that's been happening in this house while I've been away." In her room, Helena slowly closed the door and leaned her back against it, still clutching her father's jacket. The room was dark, with the curtains closed, and only a sliver of light coming through a crack in the window. It was a large room, with light wood furniture, a bed with a faded pink comforter, and shelves full of books and toys that looked like they hadn't been touched in a long time. Helena walked to the bed and sat on the edge, still trembling. She could hear voices downstairs, her father's deep voice mixed with Veronica's sharp one, and although she couldn't make out the words, she knew they were arguing because of her. It was always because of her. The girl closed her eyes and tried to block out the sounds, tried to transport herself to some distant place where none of this could reach her. But the shame of what had happened at school was still too fresh, still burned like an open wound. She could see her classmates' laughing faces, could hear their mocking voices, could smell the odor that made her want to disappear forever. A tear rolled down Helena's cheek, followed by another, and soon she was crying silently, her shoulders shaking and her chest tight. She hugged her father's jacket tighter, seeking some comfort in the fabric that smelled of men's cologne and safety. Meanwhile, downstairs, Ryan and Veronica were face to face in the living room, the tension between them palpable. Ryan crossed his arms and looked at her with a hard expression. "So explain it to me," he said in a controlled voice. "Explain to me how my daughter is starving in my own house." Veronica sighed dramatically and tossed her hair back. "You're exaggerating, Ryan. The girl isn't starving. She just doesn't eat right. I've tried everything, but she's stubborn." "There was no food in the fridge, Veronica. Helena told me. How was she supposed to eat if there was no food?" The woman rolled her eyes again. "It must have run out. I don't keep a running count of how many eggs or slices of bread are in the house. Besides, I'm not a maid. It's not my job to prepare 3 meals a day for a kid who won't even eat." Ryan took a step forward, his voice dropping lower, more dangerous. "You promised to take care of her. You told me I could trust you, that Helena would be safe and well cared for while I worked." "And she is safe," Veronica retorted. "Nothing bad has happened to her in here. What happened at school today has nothing to do with me." "It has everything to do with you," Ryan shot back, feeling the rage rise in his throat. "She got sick because she was weak, and she was weak because you're not taking care of her, because you're too busy throwing parties and drinking with your friends." Veronica crossed her arms defensively. "I have a right to a social life. I can't be stuck in this house all the time just because you have a problem child." "Problem child?" Ryan repeated, disbelieving. "Are you calling my daughter a problem child?" "She is," Veronica insisted. "She doesn't talk to anyone, stays locked in her room all the time, doesn't participate in anything. It's like she's not even here. I try to talk to her, and she ignores me. I make food, and she leaves it on her plate. I offer to help, and she pulls away. What else do you want me to do?" Ryan took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I want you to be honest with me. I want you to tell me what's really been going on in this house, because I know there's more to it than what you're saying." Veronica hesitated for a moment, and Ryan saw the shift in her expression. There was something she was hiding, something she didn't want him to know. He took another step forward, invading her personal space. "What did you do to her, Veronica?" The woman backed away, holding up her hands in a defensive gesture. "I didn't do anything. I just tried to discipline her, tried to teach her how things work. But she's stubborn, Ryan. She doesn't learn." "Discipline," Ryan repeated slowly. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Before Veronica could answer, a sound from the stairs made them both look up. Helena was standing halfway down the steps, still wrapped in her father's jacket, her eyes wide and her face pale. She had come down because she'd heard the argument and couldn't bear to be alone in her room anymore, couldn't stand the heavy silence that was suffocating her. Ryan immediately softened his expression and held out a hand to his daughter. "Helena, come here, sweetie." The girl slowly descended the rest of the stairs and walked to her father, who wrapped her in a protective hug. Veronica watched the scene with an expression of irritation and contempt. "See?" she said, pointing at Helena. "This is what I have to deal with. She doesn't stay in her room when I tell her to. She doesn't obey. She doesn't respect boundaries." Ryan looked at Veronica with a coldness that made the woman flinch. "She's a child. She doesn't need to obey you like a military recruit. She needs care, affection, and attention." Veronica let out a bitter laugh. "You talk a good game, but who's here every day? Who has to put up with her silence, her sullen face, her constant rejection? Me, not you. You're always working, traveling, closing deals, and I'm stuck here with a kid who doesn't even consider me part of the family." Ryan held Helena tighter, feeling the girl tremble. "Maybe she doesn't consider you part of the family because you never acted like it." Veronica opened her mouth to reply, but Ryan held up a hand, cutting her off. "I don't want to hear any more of your excuses. I want to see the fridge. I want to see her room. I want to understand what's happening here." He took Helena by the hand and led her to the kitchen, with Veronica following, behind protesting. The kitchen was large and modern, with white cabinets, marble countertops, and state-of-the-art appliances. But when Ryan opened the refrigerator, what he saw confirmed his worst fears. There were only a few bottles of wine, a box of gourmet cheeses, exotic fruits, and leftovers from expensive meals that were clearly not suitable for a child. "There really was no food," Ryan said in a low voice, more to himself than to Veronica. "There was nothing Helena could eat." "I was going to go grocery shopping today," Veronica defended herself, "but you got here first." Ryan slammed the refrigerator. Door shut and turned to her. "You were going to go shopping today. What about yesterday? And the day before and last week? How many times has my daughter gone to bed hungry because you were too busy to buy food?" Veronica crossed her arms but didn't answer. Ryan looked at Helena, who was standing beside him, her head bowed and her shoulders slumped. He knelt again to be at the girl's level. "Helena," he said softly, "tell me the truth. How long have you been going hungry?" The girl looked at her father with tear-filled eyes. "I don't know, Daddy. A long time." Ryan felt his heart break. He hugged his daughter again and whispered in her ear, "I'm so sorry. I should have noticed. I should have been here." Helena just clung to her father, finally allowing herself to truly cry. Ryan held her, while Veronica watched with an expression that shifted between guilt and irritation. After a few minutes, Ryan stood up and lifted Helena into his arms. "Let's go upstairs," he said. "I want to see your room." They went up the stairs together, with Veronica reluctantly following. When they reached Helena's room, Ryan pushed the door open and went inside. What he saw made him even more concerned. The room was too clean, too organized, as if no one actually lived there. The toys were arranged on the shelves with no signs of use. The bed was perfectly made, and there was no trace of a child's personality. Ryan put Helena down and walked around the room, observing every detail. He opened the closet and saw clothes folded perfectly, but they were all old, some even too small for the girl. He looked at the desk and saw school notebooks, but no drawings, no photos, no personal items. "Where are your things, Helena?" he asked. "Where are the drawings you used to make? The pictures of your mum? The gifts I gave you?" Helena lowered her head and didn't answer. Veronica, on the other side of the room, let out an impatient sigh. "I organized it," she said. "The room was a mess, so I cleaned it up. I threw out what wasn't useful anymore." "You threw out her things?" Ryan said, incredulous. "You threw out her memories without asking?" "It was just old papers and junk," Veronica retorted. "It had no value." "It had value to her," Ryan replied, feeling his anger return with full force. Those were her mother's things. They were the memories she had. He turned to Helena, whose eyes were filled with tears again. "Where's the picture frame, sweetie? The one with your mom's photo?" Helena pointed to a locked armoire in the back of the room. "In there," she said quietly. Ryan walked to the armoire and tried to open it, but it was locked. He turned to Veronica. "Where's the key?" "I don't know," she answered too quickly. "It must be lost." Ryan didn't believe her. He looked around the room and saw a small dresser near the window. He walked over, opened the drawers and rummaged through them, until he found a set of keys hidden under folded scarves. He took the keys and went back to the armoire, trying them one by one until he found the right one. When the armoire finally opened, Ryan saw a pile of boxes and plastic bags stacked haphazardly. He pulled out one of the boxes and opened it, finding photos, drawings, letters, and the picture frame Helena had mentioned. It was a family photo taken years ago when Helena's mother was still alive. Ryan felt a pang of pain seeing his wife's face, smiling with Helena in her lap. He handed the picture frame to Helena, who held it carefully, as if it were the most precious object in the world. The girl caressed the photo with her fingers, and fresh tears streamed down her face. Ryan continued to search the armoire and found more things. Clothes he had bought for Helena that had never been worn, new toys still in their boxes, books he had given her as gifts. Everything was there, hidden away as if Helena deserved to have access to her own things. "Why did you do this?" Ryan asked, turning to Veronica. "Why did you hide everything?" Veronica lifted her chin in a defiant gesture. "Because she doesn't take care of her things. She leaves everything lying around, messy. I was just teaching her responsibility." "Teaching her responsibility," Ryan repeated, feeling his blood boil. "You locked up her things as a punishment. You took away the only memories she had of her mother." "She needs to learn," Veronica insisted, but her voice was losing its firmness. "I just wanted her to be more organized, more obedient." Ryan took a step toward her, and Veronica backed away. "She's a child, Veronica, a child who lost her mother, a child who needs love and understanding, not punishment and control." He turned to Helena, who was still clutching the picture frame. "Let's go downstairs, sweetie, we need to talk." They went down the stairs again and back to the living room. Ryan helped Helena sit on the sofa and sat beside her. Veronica remained standing, leaning against the wall, watching with a resentful expression. Ryan looked at his daughter and saw the marks he hadn't noticed before. There was a bruise on her arm, partially hidden by her sleeve. There was a purple mark on her knee. There were signs that Helena was suffering in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. "Helena," he said softly, "pull up your sleeve for me." The girl hesitated, looking nervously at Veronica. Ryan followed her gaze and understood. Helena was afraid. He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder and spoke firmly. "It's okay. I'm here. No one is going to hurt you." Helena swallowed hard and slowly began to lift her sleeve. What Ryan saw made his heart stop for a moment. There were bruises in various stages of healing, some yellowish, others purple, and marks that looked like they were from fingers squeezing tightly. "How did you get these bruises, Helena?" Ryan asked, though he already knew the answer. The girl looked at the floor. "I fell," she said in a low voice. Ryan looked at Veronica, who was pale and tense. "She fell," he repeated. "And these bruises on both arms? Did she fall on both sides at the same time?" Veronica didn't answer. She just stood there, arms crossed, her face a closed mask. Ryan turned back to Helena. "Tell me the truth, sweetie. How did you get these marks?" Helena began to cry softly. "I was hungry," she said between sobs. "I asked for food, but she got mad. She said I was being whiny. She said I was making excuses to get out of my chores. She grabbed me by the arm and dragged me to my room. She said I could only eat when I learned to obey." Ryan felt a wave of rage so intense, he had to close his eyes for a moment to control himself. When he opened them again, he looked at Veronica with an expression that made her shrink back even further. "You hurt my daughter." Veronica shook her head quickly. "It wasn't like that. She's exaggerating. I just held her so she would listen to me. Children need discipline, Ryan. You can't let them do whatever they want all the time." "Discipline doesn't leave bruises," Ryan said in a low, dangerous voice. "Discipline doesn't involve starving a child. Discipline isn't hiding the memories of her deceased mother. What you did wasn't discipline, it was cruelty." Veronica opened her mouth to defend herself, but Ryan held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want to hear it. I want you out of this house now." The woman's eyes widened. "What? You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," Ryan replied. I want you to pack your things and leave. Today. You can't kick me out, Veronica protested, her voice becoming shrill. I've lived here for 3 years. I have rights. You lost any right the moment you laid a hand on my daughter, Ryan said with absolute firmness. The moment you let her starve. The moment you treated her like a burden instead of a child who needs care. Veronica looked, from Ryan to Helena, searching for any sign of weakness, any crack she could exploit. But Ryan was unshakable, and Helena was hidden on the sofa, holding the picture frame like a life raft. You're going to regret this, Veronica threatened. You won't be able to take care of her alone. You work all the time. How are you going to manage? I'll figure it out, Ryan answered. And if I have to choose between my job and my daughter, I choose my daughter. Always. Veronica realized there was nothing more she could say or do to change the situation. She let out a frustrated sigh and stomped up the stairs to the room she shared with Ryan. A few minutes later, she returned carrying a large suitcase already filled with her clothes and personal belongings. You'll regret this, she repeated as she passed through the living room. That girl will drive you crazy. She's too much trouble. Ryan didn't respond. He just held Helena closer and watched as Veronica opened the front door and left, slamming it shut behind her. The sound echoed through the house, followed by a deep, heavy silence. Ryan looked at Helena, who was trembling, on the sofa, her eyes wide and her face pale. He pulled her into a hug and held her tight, feeling his daughter's small, fragile body against his. It's over, he whispered. She's gone. And I promise I will never let anyone hurt you like that again. The silence that settled over the house after Veronica left was different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence Helena knew so well, the kind that came with fear and loneliness. It was a new silence, still uncomfortable, but one that held the promise of something different, something that could be better. Ryan remained on the sofa, hugging Helena, feeling his daughter's heartbeat slowly calm down. He didn't know exactly what to say, didn't know how to start fixing everything that was broken, but he knew he had to try. Are you hungry? He asked softly. Helena nodded slightly, still holding the picture frame against her chest. Ryan stood up slowly, helping his daughter to her feet as well. Let's order something to eat. What would you like? The girl hesitated, as if she didn't know how to answer. Ryan realized she was probably used to having no choices, to accepting whatever she was, given or having nothing at all. He knelt again to be at her level. It can be anything, Helena. Pizza, burgers, Chinese food, whatever you want. Helena thought for a moment, and then whispered, Pizza. Ryan smiled, the first genuine smile he'd had in hours. Great choice. What kind? Pepperoni, Helena replied, her voice still quiet but a little firmer. Pepperoni is perfect, Ryan said, taking out his phone and placing the order. While they waited for the food to arrive, he took Helena to the kitchen and got her a juice box he found in the pantry. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. They went back to the living room and sat together on the sofa. Ryan looked at his daughter, really seeing her for the first time in a long time. Helena was too thin, too pale, too tired. There were shadows under her eyes, and a fragility in her movements that broke his heart. Helena, he began, trying to find the right words. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't realize what was happening. I should have been here. I should have seen it. The girl looked at her father with her big, brown eyes. You were working, Daddy. I was, Ryan admitted, but that's no excuse. You're my daughter. You should have been my priority. And I failed you. Helena said nothing, just kept looking at him with that expression that mixed fear and hope. Ryan reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from his daughter's face. Things are going to be different now, he promised. I'm going to be here. I'm going to take care of you, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. Before Helena could respond, the doorbell rang. Ryan got up and went to the door, taking the pizza from the delivery guy and returning to the living room. He opened the box on the coffee table, and the smell of melted cheese and pepperoni filled the room. Help yourself, he said, but Helena looked at the pizza with an almost frightened expression. Ryan realized she was probably so used to being deprived of food that she was now afraid to eat too much, afraid of being scolded. He took a slice and put it on a plate for her. "Eat slowly, okay? There's no rush. And you can have as much as you want." Helena picked up the slice with trembling hands and took a small bite. The taste of hot, fresh food felt strange after going hungry for so long. She chewed slowly, and Ryan saw tears begin to stream down her face. "What is it, sweetie?" he asked, concerned. "It's good," Helena said through her tears. "It's been a long time since I had something this good." Ryan felt his chest tighten again. He moved closer and hugged his daughter, letting her cry against his shoulder. "You're going to eat good things every day now," he promised. "Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks too if you want. You will never go hungry again." They ate together, mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, filled only by the sound of the TV on low volume and the occasional sound of chewing. Helena ate 2 slices of pizza, more than Ryan had expected, and drank a whole glass of juice. When she finished, she leaned back on the sofa, with a look of satisfaction Ryan hadn't seen in years. "Better?" he asked, and Helena nodded. They stayed there for a while longer, just sitting together until Ryan noticed it was getting dark outside. He looked at Helena and saw that her eyes were heavy, fighting off sleep. "How about we get you a bath and then you can get some rest," he suggested. Helena agreed, and they went upstairs together. But when they reached the second-floor landing, the girl stopped and looked nervously at the staircase leading to the 3rd floor, where Ryan's office and some rarely used rooms were. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked. "The stairs are dark," Helena said in a low voice. "I'm scared." Ryan looked at the stairs and realized they were indeed dark. He walked to the switch and turned on all the lights, illuminating every step. "Is that better?" Helena nodded but still seemed hesitant. Ryan held out his hand. "Want me to go up with you?" The girl took her father's hand, and together they slowly climbed the stairs. When they reached the top, Helena stumbled on one of the steps and Ryan quickly caught her, preventing a fall. "Careful," he said softly. "I'm here." They went to the master bathroom, and Ryan helped Helena get her bath ready. He adjusted the water temperature, laid out clean towels, and even found some kids' shampoo he had bought months ago but had never been used. "I'll be right outside," he said. "If you need anything, just call me." While Helena bathed, Ryan stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, thinking about everything he had discovered that day. He felt guilty, furious, and determined to do better from now on, but he also felt lost. How was he going to balance his work with providing full-time care for Helena? How was he going to rebuild his daughter's trust after abandoning her for so long? His thoughts were interrupted by Helena's quiet voice calling from the bathroom. "Daddy?" Ryan moved closer to the door. "Yes, sweetie? Can you help me dry my hair? I can't reach it right." "Of course," Ryan replied, his heart warming at the request. It was a sign that Helena was starting to trust him again. After the bath, with Helena in clean pajamas and her hair still damp, they went back downstairs. But instead of going straight to her room, Ryan had an idea. "Helena, would you like to see the office upstairs? There are some things in there I think you'll like." The girl looked at her father with curiosity. "What kind of things?" "Things that belong to your mum," Ryan said softly. "Photos, letters, memories. I saved everything in there after she passed away. I thought one day you might want to see them." Helena nodded enthusiastically, and they went back up to the 3rd floor, this time heading straight for the office. It was a large room with bookshelves full of books, a big wooden desk, and a window overlooking the garden. Ryan turned on the lights and walked to a bookshelf where several boxes were stored. He took one down and placed it on the desk, opening it carefully. Inside were photo albums, letters yellowed with age, and small objects that had belonged to Helena's mother. The girl approached with wide eyes, touching each item as if it were a precious treasure. "Was this Mommy's?" she asked, picking up a delicate necklace. "It was," Ryan confirmed. "She wore it a lot. Said it brought her luck." Helena held the necklace to her chest and then carefully placed it back in the box. She picked up one of the photo albums and began to flip through it, seeing pictures of her mother pregnant, of the day Helena was born, of her first few years of life. Each photo was a window into a time she could barely remember, a time when there was love and happiness. She was pretty, Helena said, touching a photo of her mother smiling. She was, Ryan agreed, sitting beside his daughter. And you look just like her. Helena looked at her father with shining eyes. I do? You do, Ryan said, smiling. The same eyes, the same smile, the same gentle way about you. The girl continued flipping through the album until she came to a photo of the whole family, father, mother, and daughter, all together at the park. Helena touched the photo with her fingers, and her voice trembled when she asked, "Why did she go away, Daddy?" Ryan took a deep breath. It was a conversation he knew he needed to have, but had never found the courage to start. She didn't go away, Helena. She got sick, very sick, and even with all the doctors and medicine, she couldn't get better. Helena looked at her father with tears in her eyes. Veronica said it was my fault, that Mommy went away because I was difficult. Ryan felt the anger return, but he controlled it. He held Helena's face in his hands and looked into her eyes with all the seriousness he could muster. That is not true, Helena. It was not your fault. It never was. Your mum loved you more than anything in this world, and she didn't choose to leave. She fought very hard to stay, but the illness was stronger. So she didn't leave me because I was bad? Helena asked, her voice full of hope. You were never bad, Ryan said firmly. You have always been the sweetest, kindest, most special girl there is. And your mom knew that. She loved you so deeply. Helena began to cry again, but this time they were tears of relief. Ryan hugged her and let her cry for as long as she needed. They stayed there for a long time, holding each other, as the tears washed away years of pain and misplaced guilt. After Helena calmed down, they continued exploring the boxes. Ryan found letters her mother had written to her, letters she had left to be opened on special dates in the future. There was one for Helena's 10th birthday, one for when she turned 15, one for her high school graduation, and so on. Can I read the one for my birthday? Helena asked. I'm already past 10. Ryan looked at the letter and then at his daughter. Of course you can. Helena carefully opened the envelope and took out the letter. Her mother's handwriting was delicate and neat, and the words were full of love and hope. The girl read in silence, tears streaming down her face, and when she finished, she held the letter to her chest. She said she loved me, Helena whispered. She said she would always be with me, even if I couldn't see her. And she is, Ryan said, in your heart, in your memories, in every good thing you do. They stayed in the office for a while longer, exploring the memories, talking about her mother, reminiscing about the good times. It was painful, but it was also healing. It was a necessary process of grieving and reconnecting. When they finally went downstairs, it was past 10 o'clock. Ryan took Helena to her room and helped her get settled in bed. He tucked her in with the blanket and sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want me to stay here until you fall asleep? He asked. Helena nodded. Ryan took a book from the shelf and began to read aloud, something he hadn't done in years. It was a book of fairy tales, with stories of princesses and heroes, of happy endings and life lessons. Helena listened with her eyes closed, her breathing growing slower and deeper as sleep overcame her. When Ryan finished the story, he looked at his daughter and saw that she was sleeping peacefully. He leaned over and gently kissed her forehead. Good night, my princess, he whispered. I love you. Ryan went down to the living room and sank onto the sofa, physically and emotionally exhausted. It was then that he heard a sound coming from the kitchen. He got up, alert, and walked in to find Sebastian, the family's house manager, tidying up. Sebastian was a man in his 60s, with white hair and an upright posture, who had worked for the family for over a decade. He had been hired shortly after Ryan's wife passed away and had been a constant, discreet presence in the house ever since. Sebastian, Ryan said, relieved, you're still here. The house manager turned and nodded, respectfully. Yes, sir. I thought it best to stay and help put the house in order after everything that happened today. Ryan walked over and sat in one of the kitchen chairs. You saw everything, didn't you? What Veronica was doing to Helena. Sebastian hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words. I saw some things, sir. I tried to intervene a few times, but Ms. Veronica made it clear that my opinion was not welcome. Why didn't you tell me? Ryan asked, not with accusation, but with curiosity. The house manager sighed. I tried, sir, a few times. But you were always busy, always traveling. And when I did manage to speak with you, Ms. Veronica would dismiss it and say I was exaggerating. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I should have paid more attention. I should have listened to you. The important thing is that you are here now, sir, Sebastian said, and little Helena needs that very much. Ryan nodded. Sebastian, I need your help. I need to understand everything that happened here. Everything you saw, everything you know. The house manager agreed and went to a cabinet in the pantry. He returned, carrying a box, and placed it on the table. I saved a few things, sir, documents, notes, receipts. I thought one day you might need to see them. Ryan opened the box and began to sift through the contents. There were receipts from expensive bars and restaurants, purchases of clothes and jewelry, bills from salons and spas, all charged to the house, all paid for with Ryan's money, but none of it used for Helena's benefit. There were also notes from the school, reports from teachers mentioning that Helena was arriving hungry, that she was falling asleep in class, that she was becoming more and more isolated and quiet. There was even a letter from the school counselor requesting an urgent meeting with her guardians, a letter that had never reached Ryan. She intercepted everything, Ryan said, incredulous. She hid it all from me. Yes, sir, Sebastian confirmed. Ms. Veronica was very careful to ensure you didn't know what was happening. Ryan continued reading, each document a new revelation, each note fresh proof of the neglect and abuse. There were even text messages between Veronica and her friends, where she complained about having to care for a difficult child, where, she said, Helena was a burden, and that she couldn't wait to be rid of her. When he finished reading everything, Ryan was shaking with rage. How could she do this? How could she treat a child like that? Sebastian placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder in a supportive gesture. Some people simply don't know how to care for others, sir. They have no compassion, no empathy. Ms. Veronica was one of those people. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. What do I do now, Sebastian? How do I fix this? You've already started, sir, the house manager said. You removed the person who was causing the harm. Now you need to focus on healing the wounds, rebuilding trust, showing Helena that she is loved and protected. Ryan nodded, knowing the house manager was right. He looked at the clock and saw it was almost midnight. Thank you, Sebastian, for everything, for looking out for her when I wasn't here, for saving this proof, for staying. The house manager smiled faintly. It is my pleasure, sir. Little Helena has always been a special child. She deserves all the care in the world. Ryan stood up and shook Sebastian's hand gratefully. Then he went upstairs to his room, but before going to bed he stopped by Helena's room to check on her. The girl was sleeping soundly, with the picture frame of her mother on the nightstand, and a more peaceful expression than he had seen in a very long time. Ryan whispered a silent prayer, asking for the strength to do better, to be the father Helena needed. And then finally, he went to sleep, knowing that the next day would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities for rebuilding. The next morning arrived softly, with sunbeams streaming through Helena's window and drawing golden patterns on her blanket. The girl woke up slowly, confused for a moment, not knowing where she was. But then she remembered everything that had happened the day before, the incident at school, her father's arrival, Veronica's departure, the discovery of her mother's memories. It all felt like a dream, but the picture frame on her nightstand proved it was real. Helena sat up in bed and heard sounds coming from downstairs. Quiet voices, the clinking of plates, the smell of fresh coffee. She slowly got out of bed, still in her pajamas, and walked to the door. She opened it carefully and peeked into the hallway. Everything was quiet, peaceful, different. When she went downstairs, Helena found her father in the kitchen, talking with Sebastian. Ryan was dressed casually, in jeans and a button-down shirt, not the suit he always wore for work. He turned when he heard his daughter's footsteps and smiled. "Good morning, sleepyhead," he said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Helena nodded shyly. Ryan pulled out a chair for her at the kitchen table, Sebastian made breakfast. We have toast, cheese, ham, fruit, orange juice, and even chocolate cake. What would you like? Helena looked at the bountiful table with wide eyes. It had been so long since she'd seen a table like this, full of options, full of real food. Can I eat all of this? She asked, still unsure. You sure can, Ryan replied, sitting beside her. And you'll eat like this every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, always. Helena started slowly, taking a piece of toast and spreading butter on it. Then she added cheese, then a slice of ham. She ate carefully, chewing slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Ryan watched with a mixture of joy and sadness, happy to see her eating, but sad to know she had gone so long without it. After breakfast, while Helena was in the bathroom brushing her teeth, the doorbell rang. Ryan went to answer it and found two people at the door, a middle-aged woman with her hair in a bun and a younger man with glasses and a folder under his arm. Good morning, the woman said, with a professional smile. My name is Carla Peterson. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services. This is Dr. Robert Evans, a psychologist. We received a report from the school about an incident involving a child at this residence and came to do a follow-up visit. Ryan's stomach clenched, but he maintained his composure. Of course, please come in. He led them to the living room, which still showed signs of the previous day's mess, though Sebastian had already cleaned most of it. Carla and Robert sat on the sofa, and Ryan remained standing, nervous. Mr. Anderson, Carla began, opening a folder and consulting some papers. We're here to assess the living conditions of your daughter, Helena. The school reported a concerning incident yesterday, and there are previous records of possible neglect. Could you explain what's been going on? Ryan took a deep breath and decided to be completely honest. I failed my daughter, he said bluntly. I was so focused on work that I didn't see what was happening in my own home. My partner, who was supposed to be caring for Helena, was actually neglecting and emotionally abusing her. I only found out yesterday, after the incident at school. Carla took careful notes. And where is this partner now? I kicked her out, Ryan replied. She doesn't live here anymore, and she won't be back. Robert, the psychologist, adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. Mr. Anderson, I understand that discovering this situation must have been a shock, but we need to ensure that Helena is in a safe and stable environment from now on. You work long hours, you travel frequently. How do you plan to reconcile your professional responsibilities with the full-time care of a child who clearly needs attention and psychological support? Ryan had thought about this all night. I'm making significant changes to my work routine, he said. I'm going to delegate more responsibilities, cut back on travel and be present. Helena is my priority now, and I'm going to hire professionals who can help her. Therapists, nutritionists, whatever is necessary. Carla nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. We would like to speak with Helena, if possible, privately so she feels comfortable talking. Ryan agreed and went to get his daughter, who was upstairs. Helena came down reluctantly, clutching her mother's picture frame to her chest. When she saw the strangers in the living room, she hid behind her father. Hi, Helena, Carla said in a soft voice. My name is Carla, and this is Robert. We're from Child Protective Services, and we're here to talk with you for a little bit. You don't have to be scared, okay? We just want to know how you're feeling. Helena looked at her father, seeking approval. Ryan nodded and gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. It's okay, sweetie, you can talk to them. The girl sat on the sofa, still holding the picture frame, and Ryan stepped away to give them space, moving to the kitchen, but leaving the door ajar so he could hear if Helena needed him. Carla started with simple questions about school, about what she liked to do, about her friends. Helena answered in monosyllables at first, but gradually she began to open up. Robert observed attentively, noting details about the girl's body language, her response patterns, the signs of trauma. Helena, Carla said gently after a few minutes, can you tell me what happened at school yesterday? The girl lowered her head, and her hands tightened on the picture frame. I got sick, she whispered. I was really hungry and my tummy hurt. Then I couldn't hold it and I peed and pooped my pants. Everyone laughed at me. Carla nodded with understanding. That must have been very hard. And tell me, how long had you been hungry? Helena thought for a moment. I think since the day before. There was no food at home. Veronica didn't buy food for me. And what else did Veronica do or not do? Robert asked softly. Helena began to talk, and the words poured out like a river that had finally found an outlet. She told them about the nights she was sent to her room without dinner, about the times she was scolded for asking for food, about the parties that happened in the house while she was locked in her room, hungry and scared. She told them about how Veronica would hide her things, about the bruises on her arms from being grabbed too hard, about the harsh, cruel words that told her she was difficult, a problem child, and to blame for her mother's death. With each revelation, Carla and Robert exchanged worried glances. When Helena finished, she was crying silently. Carla moved closer and gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. You were very brave to tell us all of this, Helena, and I want you to know that nothing that happened was your fault. You are not difficult. You are not a problem. You are a child who has been through very hard things and who deserves care and protection. Helena looked at Carla with hopeful eyes. Really? Really, Carla confirmed. And we're going to make sure you get all the help you need. Robert stood up and went to the kitchen where Ryan was waiting anxiously. They spoke in low voices for a few minutes and then returned to the living room together. Mr. Anderson, Carla said, we've spoken with Helena and it's clear she has experienced a situation of severe neglect and emotional abuse. However, we also see that you are genuinely committed to changing this situation. Therefore, we will not be removing Helena from your custody, but we will be establishing a strict follow-up plan. Ryan felt a wave of enormous relief wash over him. Anything you need? Any follow-up? Any changes? Robert pulled some papers from his folder. We will require Helena to begin psychological therapy immediately. We recommend twice-weekly sessions to start. We also suggest nutritional and medical follow-ups to ensure she recovers physically from malnutrition, and we will be making monthly visits for the first 6 months to assess her progress. Ryan agreed to everything. Sebastian, who had appeared at the kitchen door, also offered to help in any way necessary. There's one more thing, Carla said. Helena needs stability and routine. That means regular times for meals, sleep, schoolwork, and play. It means the constant presence of a responsible adult. Can you guarantee that? Ryan looked at his daughter, who was sitting on the sofa looking at him with those big, hopeful eyes. Yes, he said firmly, I will completely reorganize my life if I have to. Helena comes first now. Carla and Robert stayed for another hour, talking with Ryan about available resources, recommended therapists and support groups for parents and children. When they finally left, they left behind a folder full of information and contacts, along with dates for the next follow-up visits. After they left, Ryan went back to the living room and sat next to Helena. The girl immediately snuggled up against him, seeking comfort. They stayed there for a long moment, just holding each other, processing everything that had happened. Daddy, Helena said finally, are you really going to be home more? I am, Ryan promised. Starting. Today everything is going to be different. I'll take you to school in the morning and pick you up in the afternoon. We'll have breakfast together every day. We'll have dinner together. And on the weekends, we'll do fun things. Go to the park, to the movies, wherever you want. Helena smiled, the first genuine smile Ryan had seen on his daughter's face in a very long time. Can I really choose? You sure can, Ryan replied, smiling back. You can choose everything. What to eat, what to do, where to go. This is your home, Helena, and you have a voice here. In the days that followed, Ryan kept every promise he made. He drastically reduced his workload, delegating projects to his partners and cancelling international trips. He hired a therapist specializing in childhood trauma named Dr. Paula, a kind woman in her 40s who immediately connected with Helena. The therapy sessions were difficult at first. Helena was afraid to talk, afraid of being judged, afraid her father would change his mind and abandon her again. But Dr. Paula was patient and understanding, and slowly Helena began to open up, sharing her fears, her pain, her nightmares. Ryan also started therapy, not just to learn how to be a better father, but to process his own guilt and grief. He realized he had taken refuge in his work after his wife's death, using the company as a way to avoid dealing with his loss. And in the process, he had abandoned the daughter who needed him most. The household routine changed completely. Every morning, Ryan woke up early and made breakfast with Sebastian's help. Helena would come down and they would eat together, talking about the day ahead, about plans and dreams. Afterward, Ryan would take Helena to school himself, and in the afternoon, he was there to pick her up. At school, things were changing too. The counselor, Ms. Miller, had spoken with all the teachers and students about bullying and empathy, using the incident with Helena as a teaching moment without singling her out. A few classmates even came up to apologize, and Helena, still shy, accepted. There was also a girl named Julia who sat near Helena in class. Julia was quiet too, a child who liked to draw and read, and the two began talking during recess. It was the first real friendship Helena had made in years, and Ryan was thrilled when his daughter asked to have Julia over to play on the weekend. The physical changes were also visible. With proper and regular nutrition, Helena began to gain weight healthily. Her cheeks regained their color, her eyes began to sparkle again, and she had more energy. The nutritionist Ryan hired created a balanced meal plan, and Sebastian dedicated himself to preparing delicious and nutritious meals. At night, before bed, Ryan would always go up to Helena's room to read her a story or just talk. It was in those moments that the girl felt safest to share things that bothered her, fears she still had, doubts about the future. One night, after finishing a story about a brave princess, Helena looked at her father with a serious expression. "Daddy, can Veronica come back?" Ryan put the book aside and looked into his daughter's eyes. "No, Helena, she can't come back. And even if she tried, I wouldn't let her. This is your home, and you are safe here. What if you have to travel again? What if you get really busy and forget about me?" Ryan felt his heart ache. He held his daughter's face in his hands. "I will never forget about you, Helena, never. And if I have to travel, it will be for a short time, and you'll either come with me or stay with someone I trust. But I will always, always come back, I promise." Helena nodded, and Ryan could see that she was starting to believe him, starting to trust again. It was a slow process, but it was happening. The months passed, and with them came more positive changes. Helena started an art class at school, where she could express her feelings through drawings and paintings. The therapist said it was excellent progress, that art was helping Helena process her trauma in ways words couldn't. Ryan changed professionally as well. He promoted one of his partners to CEO, sharing the company's responsibilities. He still worked, but now with set hours and without the constant pressure he had before. He discovered he could be a good businessman and a good father at the same time. He just needed balance. At the 6-month follow-up visit, Carla and Robert were impressed with the progress. Helena had gained weight, was attending school regularly with good grades, had made friends, and most importantly, she was genuinely smiling. The house was organized, there were photos of father and daughter on the walls, and the atmosphere was warm and full of love. "Mr. Anderson," Carla said with a genuine smile, "the work you've done these past few months is admirable. Helena is clearly in a safe and loving environment. We'll continue with quarterly visits, but we are very pleased with her progress." After they left, Ryan and Helena celebrated with a picnic in the backyard. Sebastian had prepared sandwiches, fruit and juice, and they sat on a blanket under a tree, just enjoying the sunny day. "Daddy," Helena said suddenly, "I wanted to thank you." Ryan looked at his daughter, surprised. "Thank me for what?" "For coming back," she replied. "For saving me. For being here now." Ryan felt his eyes sting with tears. "Helena, I should have been here from the beginning. I'm the one who should be thanking you for giving me a second chance, for trusting me again." Helena moved closer and hugged her father. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, my daughter. More than anything in this world." They stayed there holding each other as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard. It wasn't a perfect happy ending, because there was still work to be done, still wounds to be healed, still difficult days ahead. But it was a new beginning. It was a promise that things could be different, that love and care could heal even the deepest pains. Helena still had nightmares sometimes, still had days when anxiety tightened its grip and she couldn't eat right. Ryan still felt guilty for the years he'd lost, still questioned if he was doing enough. But they were together now, facing every challenge as a team, as a real family. Sebastian watched from a distance, smiling discreetly, happy to see the house finally full of life again. The kitchen that was once cold and empty was now always bustling, with the smells of fresh food and laughter echoing off the walls. The yard that was once merely ornamental now had a swing set that Ryan had installed, and a dollhouse that he and Helena were building together on weekends. One afternoon, weeks later, while they were working on the dollhouse, Helena stopped suddenly and looked at her father. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be like you." Ryan stopped what he was doing and looked at his daughter with curiosity. "How so?" "I want to help people," Helena explained. "Like you helped me. I want to be someone who saves other kids who are lonely and scared." Ryan's chest swelled with pride. "You're going to be amazing at whatever you choose to do, Helena, and if you want to help people, I will support you completely." Helena smiled and went back to work on the dollhouse, and Ryan watched his daughter with a mixture of love and admiration. She was so strong, so resilient, so full of kindness despite everything she had been through. She was the best part of him, the best part of the wife he had lost, and he would do anything to make sure she had the life she deserved. That night, after Helena had gone to sleep, Ryan stood in the living room looking at the photos on the wall. There was a new one taken a few weeks ago of father and daughter smiling in the park. It was a simple photo, but to Ryan, it represented everything. It represented the second chance he had been given, the opportunity to do better, to be better. He took out his phone and wrote a note to himself, a kind of promise. "I promise to be present every day. I promise to listen when she speaks. I promise to see when she needs me. I promise to be the father she deserves. I promise to never again choose work over her. I promise she will always know she is loved." Ryan saved the note and put his phone aside. He walked slowly up the stairs and peeked into Helena's room. The girl was sleeping peacefully, hugging the teddy bear he had bought for her, with her mother's picture frame illuminated by the nightlight beside her bed. He walked in quietly and approached, adjusting the blanket over her and kissing her forehead gently. "Good night, my princess," he whispered. "Tomorrow is a new day, and we'll be together." And as he left the room, Ryan knew that despite all the mistakes of the past, despite all the pain and suffering, there was hope. There was a chance for rebuilding, for healing, for true love. And he was going to cherish every second of it, because in the end, no matter how long it took, no matter how hard the road was, what really mattered was that a father and daughter had found each other again. They had saved each other, and together they were building a future where safety, love, and happiness were not just promises, but daily realities. A future where Helena could just be a child, without fear, without hunger, without pain. A future where Ryan could be the father he was always meant to be. And that, in itself, was the greatest gift they could both receive. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Helena and Ryan has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of pain, abandonment, and reconnection, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what part of the story resonated with you the most. Every day, we bring you intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and remind us of the importance of love, presence, and second chances. We'll see you in the next episode.